तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste, dear friends. Now I am starting a very important video on the basis of Swami Annamalai's book, Final Talks. Annamalai Swami was direct disciple of Maharishi Ramana. So Annamalai Swami came to Bhagwan in 1928 and spent nearly all of the following 10 years serving him, initially as his attendant and subsequently as the supervisor of all the building projects that Sri Ramanasramam undertook during his period. The full story of Annamalai Swami association with Bhagwan has already been told in his autobiography, Living by the Words of Bhagwan. Many of the stories that Annamalai Swami alludes to in this book are told fully in their proper context in this earlier work. In 1938, Bhagwan instructed Annamalai Swami to stop working in Sri Ramanasramam, saying that in future he should devote himself to solitary meditation in Palakotu, the community of sadhus that grew up on the western border of Sri Ramanasramam. Bhagwan even went so far as to say that Annamalai Swami should not visit him in the ashram anymore. However, the harshness of this edict was considerably softened by the fact that Bhagwan came to Palakotu every day and often visited Annamalai Swami in his home, a small house that Bhagwan himself had helped to design. See, these sages, they have their own way of doing something good to a particular person. So, just directly it may seem that Maharishi is angry, but in a very, very subtle way, it was, this instruction was actually to help Annamalai Swami. So we cannot understand their, you know, it's very difficult to understand their what they want in a particular activity. So after Bhagwan passed away in 1950, Annamalai Swami lived and did sadhana in this house for many years, devoting all his energies to carry out the spiritual teachings that Bhagwan had imparted to him. Annamalai Swami has said that his years of constant meditation in the 1950s and 60s finally brought him to a continuous awareness of the self. In the 1980s, devotees, many of them foreigners, began to visit Annamalai Swami in order to get instructions on Bhagwan's teachings. Some of the dialogues from this period appears as the final portion of Living by the Words of Bhagwan. The visitors to his ashram and the readers who subsequently encountered these teachings in book were often surprised by the elegant and transient way in which Annamalai Swami passed on the teaching that had been given to him by his master. Though he had had virtually no formal education, his deep experience of the subject matter enabled him to communicate it with rare authority. Unfortunately, very few of these sessions were recorded, so there is little record of these teaching sessions that took place in the 1980s and 90s. However, in 1995, the year that Annamalai Swami finally passed away at the age of 89, audio recordings were made of the sessions that took place between March and October. This small book is an edited record of what turned out to be the last 6 months of Annamalai Swami's teaching career. Annamalai Swami's teachings were uncompromising, straightforward, and rarely deviated from a solid core of advice that he himself had been given by his own guru. However, they were delivered with a force and a gentle humor that was irresistibly attractive. In the last few years of his life, his small room was invariably packed on the afternoons that he dispensed his wisdom. In offering this book to the general public, it is my hope that it will be found to be as useful and stimulating as the earlier collection of teaching. May the blessings of Bhagwan be on this small but valuable teaching record. So, this book was actually edited by David Godman in October 1999 at Tirumanalai. Tirumannamalai. Annamalai Swami. Now, his instructions start from here onward. Annamalai Swami says, mind is just a shadow. Attempts to catch it and control it are futile. They are just shadows chasing shadows. You cannot control or eliminate a shadow by chasing it or by putting a shadow hand on it. These are just children's games. See, we cannot control mind because mind is nothing but the chain of thoughts originating from the soul. Soul is infinite, so anything coming from infinity, infinity cannot be controlled. So, as we cannot chase our shadow, can we chase our shadow? No. So, same way, mind cannot be controlled. Swami Ramtirtha once told a story about a small boy who ran down the street trying to catch up with the head of his shadow. He never managed because no matter how fast he ran, the shadow of his head was always few feet ahead of him. His mother, who was watching him and laughing, called out, "Put your hand on your head." When the boy followed this instruction, the shadow hand caught up with the shadow head. This was enough to satisfy the boy. This kind of advice may be enough to keep children happy, but it won't produce satisfactory results in the realm of sadhana and meditation. Don't chase your shadow thoughts and your shadow mind with mind control techniques because these techniques are also shadows. Instead, go back to the source of the shadow mind and stay there. When you abide in that place, you will be happy, and the desire to go chasing after shadow thoughts will no longer be there. See, instead of struggling for controlling the mind, it is always better direct the mind to go back its source. And the source of the mind is the soul, the real self. So, try to divert the mind to go back to its source, that is the spiritual heart, where lies the real self. And mind should submerge into Atma. That is the way self realization is achieved. See, please follow these instructions, because he is a self realized soul and he has got the instructions and teachings and every help from Maharishi Ramana. So each and every word and sentence of Annamalai Swami is true, authenticated, and very helpful. Bhagwan often told the story of a man who tried to get rid of his shadow by burying it in a pit. This man dug a hole and then stood on the edge of it in such a way that his shadow was cast on the bottom of the hole he had just made. After lining it up in this way, he started throwing soil on the shadow in an attempt to bury it. Of course, no matter how much soil he put in the hole, the shadow still remained on top of it. Your mind is an insubstantial shadow that will follow you around wherever you go. Attempts to eliminate or control it cannot be succeed while there is still a belief that the mind is real and that it is something that can be controlled by physical or mental activity. Because mind is not at all real. That is the very important thing to know. Mind is not real. It is just, it does not exist in reality. It is just the thoughts arising from the soul constitute this mind. So, if we can control the arising of thoughts, the mind can be controlled. So, instead of controlling the mind, the better just stop the arising of thoughts from the soul. That is the ultimate controlling of mind. Now, a question is put to Annamalai Swami. But this shadow mind must still be eliminated by some means. Annamalai Swami answers, when self-realization happens, mind is no longer there. So, until unless the mind is destroyed, self-realization is not possible. Ego, mind, they are acting as veils around the self. So, to realize the self, the most important point is to destroy the ego and the mind. However, you do not get self realization by getting rid of the mind. It happens when you understand and know that the mind never existed. It is the recognition of what is real and true and the abandonment of mistaken ideas about the reality and substantiality of this ephemeral shadow you call the mind. So, the best thing is we must understand and realize that mind does not exist in reality. So you must be very sure about this and we must be aware of this fact. Because the thing which is not existing, how can we control, how can we destroy? That is the thing, no? The basic thing is mind does not exist. This must be understood. This is why Bhagwan and many other teachers kept bringing up the analogy of the snake and the rope. If you mistake a rope on the ground for a snake, the snake only exists as an idea in your mind. The idea might cause you a lot of worry and anxiety, and you may waste a lot of mental energy wondering how to avoid the snake or kill it. But this fact remains: there is no snake outside your imagination. When you see the rope, the substratum upon which your false idea of a snake is superimposed, the idea that there is a snake and that it is real instantly vanishes. It is not a real snake that has disappeared. The only thing that has disappeared is an erroneous idea. So, mind in reality does not exist. So the question of controlling the mind also does not exist. The thing which is not existing, how can we control it? How can we destroy it? We cannot destroy the thing which is non-existent. The substratum upon which the false idea of the mind has been superimposed is the self. When you see the mind, the self, the underlying substratum is not seen. It is hidden by a false but persistent idea. And conversely, when the self is seen, there is no mind. So, to realize the soul, mind is to be destroyed. And when the mind is destroyed, you can see the soul. Now, question put to Annamalai Swami. But how to give up this false idea that the mind is real? Annamalai Swami replies the same way that give up any wrong idea. You simply stop believing in it. If this does not happen spontaneously, when you hear the truth from a teacher, keep telling yourself, I am not the mind. I am not the mind. There is no mind. There is no mind. Consciousness alone exists. If you have a firm conviction that this is the truth, one day this firm conviction will mature to the point where it becomes your direct experience. Consciousness alone exists. If you generate a firm conviction that this is the truth, eventually this firm conviction will become your own direct experience. Consciousness alone exists. That is to say, whatever exists is consciousness alone. Keep this in mind and don't allow yourself to regard anything else as being real. If you fail and give even a little reality to the mind, it will become your own false reality. Once this initial wrong identification, I am the mind is real, has happened, problems and suffering will follow. Don't be afraid of the mind. It is a false tiger, not a real one. Something that is not real cannot harm you. Fear and anxiety may come to you if you believe that there is a real tiger in your vicinity. Someone may be making tiger noises as a joke to make you afraid, but when he reveals himself, all your fears go because you suddenly understand that there never was a tiger outside your imagination. So same way we should not worry about the mind because mind does not exist. So the thing which is not existing, why should we afraid of that? So this is the basic question and basic understanding. Now a question is put to Swami Annamalai. Question. One can have a temporary experience of the self, the underlying reality, but then it goes away. Can you offer any guidance on how to stabilize in that state? Annamalai Swami replies, a lamp that is lit may blow out if the wind is strong. If you want to see it again, you have to relight it. But self is not like this. It is not a flame that can be blown out by the passing winds of thoughts and desires. It is always bright, always shining, always there. If you are not aware of it, it means that you have put a curtain or a veil in front of it that blocks your view. Self does not hide itself behind a curtain. You are the one who puts the curtain there by believing in the idea that are not true. If the curtain parts and then closes again, it means that you are still believing in wrong ideas. If you have eradicated them completely, they will not reappear. While these ideas are covering up the self, you still need to do constant sadhana. So, going back to your question, the self does not need to stabilize itself. It is full and complete in itself. The mind can be stabilized or destabilized, but not the self. Question put to Swami Annamalai. The question says, by constant sadhana, do you mean self-enquiry? Annamalai Swami replies, yes, by strength of practice, by doing this sadhana, this veil will be removed completely. There will be no further hindrances. You can go to the top of Arunachala, but if you are not alert, if you are not paying attention, you may slip and end up at a Ishanya Mutt, a Hindu institution at the base of the hill. You have to make an enormous effort to realize the self. It is very easy to stop on the way and fall back into ignorance. At any moment, you can fall back. You have to make a strong, determined effort to remain on the peak when you first reach it. But eventually, a time will come when you are fully established in the self. When that happens, you cannot fall. You have reached your destination and no further efforts are required. Until that moment comes, constant sadhana is required. Question to Annamalai Swami. Question. Is it important to have a guru at this stage, this period when constant effort is required? Annamalai Swami replies. Yes, the guru guides you and tells you that what you have done is not enough. If you are filling a bucket with water, you can always add more if there is still space. But when it is completely full, full to overflowing, it is pointless to add even a single drop. You may think that you have done enough and you may believe that your bucket is full, but the guru is in a better position to see that there is still a space and that more water needs to be added. Don't rely on your own judgment in this manner. The state you have reached may seem to be complete and final, but if the Guru says you need more sadhana, trust him and carry on with your efforts. Bhagwan often used to say, the physical Guru is outside, telling you what to do and pushing you into the self. The inner Guru, the self within, simultaneously pulls you towards itself. Once you have become established in the inner Guru, the self, the distinction between Guru and disciple disappears. In that state, you no longer need the help of any Guru. You are that the self. Until the river reaches the ocean, it is obliged to keep on flowing. But when it arrives at the ocean, it becomes the ocean and the flow stops. The water of the river originally came from the ocean. As it flows, it is merely making its way back to its source. When you meditate or do sadhana, you are flowing back to the source from which you came. After you have reached that source, you discover that everything that exists, world, guru, mind is one. No differences or distinctions arise there. Non-duality is jnana. Duality is samsara. If you can give up duality, Brahman alone remains and you know yourself to be that Brahma. But to make this discovery, continuous meditation is required. Don't allocate periods of time for this. Don't regard it as something that you do when you sit with your eyes closed. This meditation has to be continuous. Do it while you are eating, walking, and even talking. It has to be continued all the time. Okay. Question to Annamalai Swami. How does the jnani relate to his body? How does it feel to him? Annamalai Swami replies, the jnani is not really aware of the body, or if he is, he feels it like akasha, space itself. After one of the operations to remove the tumor on Bhagwan's arm had been completed, I was worried enough to send a girl who worked for me to the ashram to ask how Bhagwan was. I could not go myself because Bhagwan has asked me not to visit him. When this girl told Bhagwan why she had come, he started laughing very loudly. I interpreted this to mean that nothing had really happened. His laughter was a message to me that Bhagwan was not his body and that I should therefore not be upset or worried by anything that happened to it. Years before, I was walking on the hill with Bhagwan when he remarked, I don't feel the weight of the body at all. I feel as if I am walking weightlessly through the sky. I sometimes have the same feeling when I am walking around. Question 2, Annamalai Swami. I was not here yesterday, but it seemed that someone asked a question about the vibration that comes of a jnani. You also apparently talked about the vibrations that ordinary people and bad people give off. Can you repeat what you said? Annamalai Swami replies, a jnani's vibrations stay even after he leaves the body. All people leave vibrations in the places they have been and lived. Jnanis leave a good vibration and bad people leave a bad vibration. I am not talking about a gross physical phenomenon that everyone can feel. The vibration that a jnani leaves is subtle. Radio broadcasts that only be heard if one has a radio that is tuned to the right frequency. You tune into a jnani's vibrations by having a quiet, still mind. This is the wavelength of the broadcast. If you have not tuned yourself to receive this frequency, you cannot expect to experience or benefit from the vibration that a jnani may have left in a place. See, this is a very important phenomena. In India, people visit pilgrim places, pilgrimage places. Why? Because these places had been visited by realized souls, sages, rishis, mahatmas. So their vibrations still exist on those pilgrimage places. So this type of vibrations may help a sadhaka. See, this is very simple. If you visit a place where animals are butchered, there you can never experience peace of mind. Once you visit such a place, a butchery where animals are butchered, you cannot have the peace of mind. Why? Because the vibrations are negative. If you visit the ashram of a sage, there you will get peace of mind because the vibrations are positive. So, if you have not tuned yourself to receive this frequency, you cannot expect to experience or benefit from the vibration that a jnani may have left in a place. Question put to Annamalai Swami. Is the intensity of the vibrations more if we stay closer to a living jnani? Annamalai Swami says yes. Another question is put to Annamalai Swami. Is it the same with the Arunachala? Annamalai Swami says yes, no doubt about it. Bhagwan himself has said that if one lives at the foot of Arunachala, one does not need any kind of initiation. If one's intentions are pure and holy, merely living here can be a good sadhana. Gohai Nama Shivaya, a saint who lived on the hill a few centuries ago, said in one of his poems that this Arunachala hill draws seekers in the same way that a magnet attracts iron. In ancient times, the Shakti, the power of this hill was hidden, but Bhagwan made it open to everybody. Bhagwan sang about this in Annamalai, verse 98. I have made public your doings, do not hate me for this. It was rare for Bhagwan to make such an open declaration about something that he had done or accomplished. He rarely used the word I when he referred to some event that had happened in earlier eras of his life. Sometimes he would use the passive form, something happened to me. At other times, he would go to the extreme of using someone else's name when he was telling a story about something that happened to himself. A question is put by a devotee. The question says, I am going back to Europe for 2 months. It may be longer because there is a possibility that I may have to prolong the trip. Annamalai Swami replies, even if you prolong your trip, Arunachala will pull you back. Pulling back is its nature in the same way that a magnet's nature attracts iron. Once you establish a connection with Arunachala, it will keep on pulling you towards it. You cannot resist. Question. So, is it dangerous for us to come and visit this place? Annamalai Swami replies, it is only dangerous for the ego until we become one with Arunachala. It will pull us to kill our ego. The water in a river cannot rest where it is. The force of gravity compels the water to flow downward back to its original source. What is the original source? Ocean. Question. You said that merely living near Arunachala could be good sadhana. The same thing must be true of living near a jnani. You have told many stories about how living with Bhagwan transformed people even those who were not making much effort to meditate or do any other formal sadhana. Annamalai Swami replies, yes, we were all immeasurably benefited by being in his presence, by doing ordinary, everyday things with him. He was always available to give advice about sadhana if anyone wanted to ask about it. But we were also benefited by his presence and by the example he set on how to live life properly. For much of the time, Bhagwan would appear to be a lenient, tolerant, easygoing father. If we did not follow his instructions about various aspects of our lives, it would seem for a while that he was allowing us to go our own way. Sometimes it even seemed as if he was approving some of the wrong things that we were doing, but slowly, when the time was right, he would lead us back to his own way. Question. So, when people did things that were really bad, he did not complain or interfere? Annamalai Swami replies, when Bhagwan lived in a mango tree cave, a man called Jada Swami gave him a lot of trouble. At the beginning of their relationship, whenever Jada Swami conducted a puja, he would invite Bhagwan along and then ask him to bang the drum at the culmination of the ceremony. This effectively relegated Bhagwan to being a minor functionary in Jada Swami's puja. Jada Swami would put on quite a good show, so much so that many passing pilgrims or members of the public would be attracted to these ceremonies. It helped, of course, that Jada Swami got a very imposing figure. With his long matted hair and fierce look, he looked like an archetypical ascetic sadhu. However, many people attending the pujas noticed the radiant expression on the face of the young boy who was banging the drum, and some of them began to prostrate to him because they could detect something of his radiant holiness. Jada Swami got very jealous when he saw this happening. But he tried to recoup some of his self-esteem by telling these visitors, he is my disciple, so you can do namaskar to him as well. Bhagwan never objected when Jada Swami behaved like this or made untrue claims about him being a disciple. When it became clear that Bhagwan was going to attract a big following of his own, Jada Swami got jealous and tried to drive him off the hill. On one occasion, when Bhagwan was sitting outside Virupaksa cave, Jada Swami even tried to kill him by rolling a big boulder onto him. Bhagwan, who was sitting with his back to Jada Swami, got an early warning of the attack when he heard some little pebbles cascading down the rock behind him. Bhagwan jumped up and caught Jada Swami red-handed. When he confronted him and asked him what he was doing, Jada Swami tried to bluff his way out of it by saying that he was just playing a practical joke. I was just doing it to see if you would get afraid, he said. Bhagwan never criticized him even after this incident, and the two of them continued to live side by side on the hill for several years afterward. Question. This behavior, these things that Jada Swami did, they are not the sort of thing that one would expect from a sadhu living on Arunachala. Anam Swami. replies, Guhaishnamashwai, who lived on the hill several centuries ago, was also famous for his bad temper. In one famous incident, he cursed a group of weavers who had been causing him trouble. Within a short time, all their businesses failed. The curse was apparently a long lasting one, for in the years that followed, all attempts to start weaving business in Tiruvannamalai failed. Question. So, would you say that Bhagwan was very tolerant of people who treated him badly? Annamalai Swami replies, yes. He never responded in a negative way to criticism. Sometimes he would even laugh when people said bad things about him. He was indifferent to praise and blame, they did not touch him. When Perumal Swami printed his insulting book about Bhagwan, Bhagwan simply said, keep the book in front of the ashram so that people can read it there. The good people won't believe it, but when the bad people read it, they will say, stay away and leave me in peace. This happened in 1930s at a time when large crowds of people were starting to come to Ramanasramam. Perumal Swami did a good job of distributing the book himself, for many of the casual visitors from town stopped coming. It was a bit of a break for us because many people would just come at mealtime hoping to get a free meal. These freeloaders were disturbance for all of us. Sundaram, Annamalai Swami's translator. The same thing is happening here. We cooked, Sundaram is further to this answer. We cooked a special meal for Punarvasu and invited some devotees to eat. Without telling Swami, one man brought 17 extra people, none of whom were devotees. We had never seen any of them before. We had only cooked food for 15 people. If one or two extra people had come, we could have managed, but we could not give a meal to all these extra people. We divided the food up to into very small quantities and fed all these unknown people who had just shown up to eat. When the meal was over, they started wandering around, making a nuisance of themselves. They disturbed the people who were still cooking in the kitchen and they stole the sandals of one of our devotees. Swami does not mind meeting with sadhaks who want to discuss important spiritual matters, but he does not like these functions where lots of people come. He is very weak most of the time and he wants to save his energy for important matters. Anamlai Swami laughing. I just give vibhuti to most of the people who come. But no matter how much I discourage visitors, they still come often for no good reason at all. I am physically weak, so I can only deal with people for short periods nowadays. I am a bit like a well that is fed by a small spring. A few people taking buckets of water out at the same time will empty the well. Then they will have to wait some time for the water to flow in again before they can take more water. A devotee who came to Annamalai Swami had so much pain in one of his legs. He found it very difficult to sit comfortably on the floor. After Annamalai Swami had observed the difficulties the man was having, he made the following remarks. Annamalai Swami. Though the body is needed for sadhana, one should not identify with it. We should make good use of it and look after it well, but we should not pay too much attention to it. There are so many thoughts in the mind, thought after the thought after thought, they never stop. But there is one thought that is continuous, though it is mostly subconscious. I am the body. This is the string on which all other thoughts are threaded. Once we identify ourselves with the body by thinking this thought, Maya follows. It also follows that if we cease to identify ourselves with the body, Maya will not affect us anymore. See, Maya is nothing but the power of God. It, it says its function is to confuse. It will lead us from reality to unreality. That is the main function of Maya. Somehow or the other, it will trick us away from the self. Maya is fundamentally non-existent. See, Bhagwan said that Maya literally means that which is not. So Maya is non-existence. It is unreal because everything that Maya produces is an outgrowth of a wrong idea. It is a consequence of taking something to be true that is not really true. How can something that is not real produce something that is real? If a barren woman says that she has been beaten by her son, or that she has been injured by the horns of a hare, we would rightly take her to be deluded. Something that does not exist cannot be the cause of suffering or of anything else. Maya may appear to be real, to have a real existence, but this is a false appearance. The truth is, it is not real, it has no existence at all. How to get rid of this? I am the body feeling and of the Maya that is produced by it. It does not when there is this Saman Bhava, the equanimity or equality of outlook that leaves one unaffected by extreme opposites such as happiness and unhappiness, pleasure and pain. When Saman, Saman Bhava is attained, the idea I am the body is no longer present and Maya is transcendent. Question put to Annamalai Swami. Is the body to be regarded as unreal, as not me? What attitude should I have towards this body and all the sensory information it provides me with? Annamalai Swami replies, by itself, this body is jada, inert and lifeless. Without the mind, the body cannot function. And how does the mind function? Through the five senses that the body provides. Mind and the body are like the tongue and teeth in the mouth. They have to work in harmony with each other. The teeth do not fight with the tongue and bite it. Mind and body should combine in the same harmonious way. However, if we want to go beyond the body, beyond the mind, we have to understand and fully accept that all the information the senses provide is not real. Like the mirage that produces an illusory oasis in the desert, the senses create the impression that there is a real world in front of us that is being perceived by the mind. The apparent reality of the world is an illusion. It is merely a misperception. When the mind perceives a snake where in reality there is only a rope, this is clearly a case of the senses projecting an imaginary image onto a real substratum. This, on a large scale, is how the unreal appearance of the world is projected by the mind and the senses onto the understanding reality of the self. Once this happens, we see the superimposition, the unreal names and forms we have created, and we forget about the substratum, the reality that underlies them. Many examples are given by our teachers and by our spiritual books. If you see a carved wooden elephant, for example, at some point you forget that it is only wood. You see the form of the carving and your mind gives that form the name elephant. While your mind is registering this name and this form, you are no longer registering the object as a block of wood. It is the same when you see jewelry made out of gold. You see a shape, call it a ring or a necklace, and while you are studying the form, you temporarily forget the substance it is made of. Self inquiry is the process by which attention is put on the substratum instead of on the names and forms that are habitually imposed on it. Self is the substratum out of which all things appear to manifest, and the jnani is one who is continually aware of the real substratum. He is never deluded into believing that the names and forms are perceived by the senses have any real existence. Whatever we see in this room, for example, that picture of Bhagwan over there is unreal. It has no more reality than the objects we perceive in our dreams. We think we live in a real, materially substantial world and that our minds and bodies are real entities that move around it. When the self is seen and known, all these ideas fade away and one is left with the knowledge self alone exists. Question. If I regard all the people that I see and meet as unreal projections, what do I base my moral sense on? I can go around killing them or robbing them without feeling guilty because I would know that they are just characters in my dream. Annamalai Swami. Everything that we perceive is Maya, an unreal dream, but one should not then think. Since everything is unreal, I can do what I like. There are dream consequences for the bad acts committed in the dream, and while you still take the dream to be the reality, you will suffer the consequences of your bad behavior. Do no evil and have no hate, have equanimity towards everything. Annamalai Swami then turned to a devotee who had been sitting motionless with his eyes closed in front of him. If you sit in a meditation for a long time without moving the body, the mind gets dull and tamasic. Even moving the toes while you sitting in a good way of getting rid of the tamas. Mirabai used to dance and sing. That is a good way to meditate. Gripadrikshana, walking around Arunachala is also good. It is walking meditation. Annamalai Swami. Today I am going to tell you a story I once heard. A rich man lived in a village from his youth till his old age. He had spent all his time accumulating wealth. He owned many houses and vast tracts of land. As his material wealth increased, his ego expanded with it. He enjoyed boasting about his wealth. One day, as he was sitting in front of his house with a stick in his hand, a poor man who was known to be little stupid passed by. Why are you holding that stick in your hand? He asked. The rich man decided to have some fun with him. It is a special stick, he replied. It has to be given to an idiot. This stick is passed from one person to person, and each person who receives it must pass it on to someone who is more stupid than he is. Giving him the stick, he continued, now it is your turn to own it. You must keep it with you until you find someone who is an even bigger idiot than you. The poor man humbly accepted the stick and began his quest to find someone whom he felt had even less intelligence than he did. Since he was by a long way the least intelligent person in the village, he could not find anyone to give the stick to. A few weeks later, he heard that the rich man was sick and dying. He went to visit him, partly to pay his last respects and partly to tell him that he had not managed to find anyone to give the stick to. He took his custody of the stick very seriously and he wanted advice from the rich man who owned what he should do with it. After some preliminary conversation about the rich man's health and the fate of the stick, the poor man asked the rich man what was going to happen to all his money when he died. I have to leave all my money here, answered the rich man. I do not know where and when I shall be reborn, but I do not know that I cannot take any of my money with me. I shall have to start off with nothing again. He relapsed onto a glum silence, not relishing the prospect of being parted from his money. The poor man, who had never really considered this aspect of dying before, thought about it for a while and then came to a conclusion. You must have the stick, he said, handing it back to him, because I have suddenly realized that you are an even bigger idiot than I am. Though you have had a long life and many opportunities, you have accumulated nothing of value that you can carry forward with you. You have no peace of mind because you are worried about losing your money, and you have accumulated no good karma because you have spent your wild life pursuing selfish ends. In a few days, the piles of money you have amassed will have the same value for you as piles of ama- have the same value as piles of garbage. This money will have no value. By devoting your entire life to the accumulation of things that will ultimately prove to be of no use, you have demonstrated that you are a worthy recipient of the stick. He placed the stick on the rich man's bed and left. That reminds me of a strange comment a disciple once made about his guru. He called his guru a heap of garbage and referred to himself as a hen. When he was asked about this, he replied, a hen can always find something good to eat so long as it keeps busy scratching around in the garbage. But effort is required. If the hen stops scratching, the supply of food stops. Question. I was not here yesterday, but I was told that someone asked the following question. I have been following Bhagwan's teachings for many years, but without any obvious benefits. I don't feel any peace. What am I doing wrong? Why am I not getting